Hello and welcome to this video, Gender Confusion, the Cause of the Chaos, which I've written here on my Rizla. This is the only notes that I've made. Gender Confusion, Cause of Chaos. I've been mulling over in my mind for a day, but obviously before as well. What is the result of the gender equality? Has anyone really done a proper look, a proper documentary on, how society has changed over the last, say, 60 years? As women have come out of their traditional roles of homemaker and into the world of work. And I don't know, I don't think there has been a proper documentary done on it. So I'm making one. This is my documentary on how gender equality has affected society. Now, if we were to reflect and compare life in the 1960s to now, there'd be some pretty obvious differences for people, say, living in this nation of England. It was definitely a man's world back then. This is a man's world! But it wouldn't be nothing. Right. But what we've got today, let's just talk about the job market. I mean, I don't know this for a fact or anything, but it seems to me if I had a daughter instead of a son, that she'd be probably doing well at school, heading to go to university and then get a professional job. Whereas my son hasn't even made it to the end of school. He's being homeschooled, educating himself, as that is his desire, and he doesn't listen to anything I say anyway, so he might as well just start learning things for himself. And, his ambition is to be a scaffolder. Obviously that's his immature mind and everything. But that's quite a shift. And it's been, for quite a while, there's been plenty of women going to university and getting professional jobs. Now, probably more than half of them then at some point have a baby, and that becomes the most important thing, and their career takes a sideline. But we're in a position where men and women are competing for the same jobs. And I think that is a big problem. Because I think the idea that we compete between the sexes is a bad idea. I mean, in sports we generally keep it separate. The women compete with the women and the men compete with the men. They're not competing men against a woman. And I think that's the way it should be. I think when you've got a man and a woman competing together, whether in work or to get a job, I think the old established rules of competition, say, fly out the window, because it's got different strengths. So this might be wrong, obviously, but if I make a broad statement that men are better at doing, but women are better at the presentation, right? Bear with me. Because if you're touting for a job, you've got to, you've got to sell yourself, you've got to present yourself, basically. And I think women are better at that than men. But then if it comes down to the actual doing, I think men are better. Like, it depends what they're doing, right? So let's just say building a house or making a car, manufacturing something that's got to be practical and all the rest of it. Men would be better. Now, perhaps in presenting that, or say, making clothes, for example, which, clothes have to serve a practical need, cover your skin. But they also, there's so much you can do with them to make them look good. And I think women are definitely better at that. So my proposition would be that there should be blue jobs and pink jobs. Now, you wouldn't have to do it as an absolute set rule, because, it might be good for someone in their life to do a job that's suited to the other sex for a short time to get a sense of it. But if you're thinking about what you're going to be doing for your whole life, you're probably better off doing a job that suits your sex. Right? Some examples, okay? I've just been chopping a tree down and splitting it apart and everything, right? That's definitely a man's job. It's a job I enjoy, right? So if you like doing something, obviously you're suited to it, aren't you? And that job there, ripping the wood apart, blah, 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 it probably creates testosterone as I'm doing that. So if I'm doing that job every day, I'm going to be creating lots of testosterone, which is going to, help protect all my nerves and build my muscles strong and everything. And I'm going to be, therefore, even more suited to doing that sort of job. So if a woman did the same, she would be producing testosterone and she would become more manly. Yeah? Now, maybe there are women out there who would prefer to do that. And, fair enough, everyone should be free to do that. Whereas you look on the other side, and let's just say working with flowers, flower arranging, that sort of thing. Now, if I was to do that job on a daily basis, working with those flowers, making them all nice and pretty and doing all that sort of stuff, that's going to create estrogen, the female hormone, which might be good for me too as well. But if I do that every day, I'm just going to become more and more sort of feminine, aren't I? And more suited to do that. And I think, you're working against nature when you choose differently. When you choose to do what isn't suited to your sex, you're working against nature. You're swimming against the tide. And this is what I'm saying. Gender confusion is the cause of the chaos. So we've had a world now for 60 years where the gender confusion is growing. And the battle of the sexes is also becoming stronger. But, because no one's talking about this. I mean, we've got YouTube, right? Millions of people come on YouTube, me included, and say what we think. How much more men are doing that than women? There's barely any women talking about it. And, how can you solve a problem if it's not spoken about? So why haven't we seen the benefits of more women in higher jobs, decider jobs, jobs where decisions are made? Because that was their argument when I was growing up at school. Everyone was a feminist, and my early life, I've had no sisters, so the only time I came into contact with girls was, first of all, going to play school. First thing we had there was us boys decided that the climbing frame was only for boys and we wouldn't let the girls on the climbing frame. So then the teacher, who was a woman, came along and said, right, well that's not fair what you're doing there. I'm going to decide that now only the girls are allowed on the climbing frame. So we boys were told to get off the climbing frame, sort of looking around and see the doll's house where the girls usually play. like a load of bulls, we ploughed into there, and then there was uproar. The girls screaming, So then the teacher, I don't know what happened after that, whether, we didn't want to play in the doll's house, we wanted to play on the climbing frame. So she, very early on in life, I've got this feminist pressure on me, and that just made the divide between boys and girls grow. So then when I'm primary school, a common thing was to walk around with your mates like this going, "Oh, join on, only boys," right? So, that would happen, and then the girls would just sort of, it was fun now and then to pull up their skirt and make them scream. Right? I had girlfriends from the age of 6. I was interested in girls that way. I used to kiss them a lot. So, anyway, but yeah, a whole bunch of feminists right through my primary school. Always arguments about, who's the best, girls or boys. And the idea is that if there were more women in those decider roles, the world would be a better place. Now, fair enough, we've still got plenty of men in the big roles. America has yet to elect a woman president. The richest 5 people in the world are all men, I think. So the power is definitely still there in the men, but the women have certainly had their influence over the last 60 years. A growing influence. And what have they done with that influence? What's happened to the world? I think we've become a lot more sensitive to minority groups, making sure that they can live alongside everybody else without being persecuted. That has happened. That's a good thing. But there's certainly been still plenty of wars, and fair enough, they seem to be mostly men involved in those wars. But when Hillary Clinton was touting to become the president, she wasn't anti-war in any way. She was very threatening over Syria, and she was going to pull out all the toys for that one. So I don't think that if we say, we haven't put the women in charge, right? We haven't done that. We haven't said, the women are in charge. So we can't say it's a full experiment that we've had where the women are in charge. But women have definitely got a big power influence, especially in the Western world. And yet the problems that we are facing are just mounting hugely. Now, obviously one big one, which is the population growth, that has nothing to do with women. Apart from the fact they're making them. But that's nothing to do with like women having more power. So, I mean, that's going to happen anyway. And we haven't been tackling that problem. That's an issue. It hasn't been spoken about. So why is this? Why don't we see more women speaking out and talking about stuff? I don't know. Why are they just sort of thinking, well, I don't want to rock the boat because, you know, we've definitely had some improvements and we don't want to go back to the way it was. Yeah, it's causing some fucking problems, but I don't want to talk about that because I don't want to put my gender in jeopardy. God, where's this going, eh? Where's this going? So as our roles in society for each gender are blurred, it's not so obvious that men go and do this job and women go and do this job. Well, they probably do just gravitate towards what you feel like doing, and that is probably the best sort of thing for you. So, kind of works. Well, I think we've got a real problem that, you know, we're not getting the best from each gender. It's the competition which is taking away what we should be seeing beneficial results of us all working every day. You know, we've had a lot of, I think women have had a big influence in the health and safety, you know, making everything safe, which is good, but it also gets in the way of performance. You know, if everyone's having to spend all this part of their work time dealing with health and safety and resorts to sort of ticking boxes, which isn't their job. That's not, you know, if they were more focused on their actual job rather than making sure all these boxes are ticked and so we don't get fired or whatever, performance goes down. And, you know, things are ripping apart at the seam. It really does seem like that. So I don't think we should go back to the way it was, where men basically held all the cards and women basically just had to put up with shit. Don't think we should do that. But I think we should segregate the genders more. So probably not in primary school, but secondary school probably should be segregated because boys and girls at that age are at different stages completely. The girls probably maturing a bit earlier, whereas the boys could perhaps continue being a bit more childish for longer, more sports and things like that, a catered education for each sex. And then in the workplace, if I had 100 employees, I would have jobs that I wanted men to do and jobs that I wanted women to do. And they would be segregated. And then at lunchtime or whatever, you can eat together. It's not like you shouldn't be able to see the other sex. Now sometimes, you know, in my own life, I found working with women can definitely be a motivation to get me to work more keenly, and probably work quite well and everything, but it does depend on the job. Some jobs probably would be fine to have a mix of sexes in there. But this is what I think, it's when you get that competition against each other. And obviously there's a big thing playing out at the moment with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. I haven't watched any of the cases myself, but I didn't need to because you just hear so much about it. It does seem at the moment that Johnny Depp is winning. But obviously those two people can't be the ambassadors for the entire population of men and the entire population of women. We just have to recognise that we are different. And it's not about who's better or who's worse. We're just different. Like me, I'm living on my own, single, got my son here. There's no women here. And we're definitely missing something, you know. I would rather have a woman in my life, but I want the right woman in my life. I don't want the wrong woman in my life. And I think there's a right person for everyone, but that's a different subject. But like, I am hopeless at some things. Like, when I was with a woman, it'd be like, oh, so-and-so's birthday's coming up, we must get them a gift. Oh, do we have to? Well, yeah, we should get them a gift. At least, oh, fine, all right then. And then, you know, it happens. It happens. Like, I think the women are that sort of, that workhouse in a community. The women are the drivers of that, I think. Like, men would just leave it, you know, we just go off on our own and just leave it, you know, and we definitely have a poorer life because of it, because of that. So there are the roles to play, and, you know, they would come to us naturally if you're full of your proper hormone, because you've been doing the things that are suited to your sex. You would then be more inclined just to go that way. You just find yourself doing those things. You don't have to sort of stop and think about it. And I think that's a big cause of the problems. And we've got massive mental health problems. Massive. We've got huge health problems, and a lot of these health problems stem from the disconnect from the hormonal system, as I've spoken about before. So if you're not doing the things that are suited to your hormonal system, because if you're male, you've got a male hormonal system. If you're a woman, you've got a female hormonal system. If you're not doing the things that invigorates parts of that system, then it sort of shrinks away. It's not being used, you know. So many things, you know, that we do that aren't with nature that harm our hormonal system. And this provides all the energy, all the motivation, you know. When you disconnect from that, you're depressed and you've got no energy, you're fucked. Your immune system doesn't work properly. How many problems have we got with autoimmune disorders? Enzyme deficiencies. These are the small things which go on to have big effects. And that's what you call a cause. And the underlying cause can be something so simple as gender confusion. So I'd like to make a call to the women to speak out more and be more honest. And men, I guess. Shouldn't blame one, should I? Obviously I'm a man, so I'm going to be biased. And I think a lot more... See, where I think we shouldn't... So areas where we shouldn't, segregate the man and the woman. So, secondary school, segregate. Work, segregate. But, let's say if I had 100 employees and I was going to feed them, so I got a kitchen and I got some kitchen staff. Yeah, I'd have 2 kitchens. One for the men, to make food for the men, and one for the women, to make food for the women. Does that seem stupid? But let's say the Prime Minister of a country, I think you should have a pair of people, a woman and a man. But they'll have, probably you'd have to give one of them the final say to get things done, perhaps. I don't know. But so that they can see both aspects, because that's very important if you're a Prime Minister. And the home. You should have a man and a woman in the home, bringing up children. That should be the way it is. Now, it hasn't happened for me. Partly I wasn't prepared to put up with certain things. And partly on the case of the other person, wasn't prepared to put up with certain things. So we split. But obviously there's plenty of people who do stay together, and that is the most ideal thing. And I think it's crazy if you got the idea of 2 same-sex people can do a gooder job as 2 heterosex people. I just think that's bullshit. The gender of your child, if it's not the same gender of yours, if I had a daughter, there's so many things that I just wouldn't be very good at helping with because I'd never been a girl. But having a son, I've been there through the growing up. I kind of get a much better idea of what's going on. So obviously we need to work together. So we need to be in a position where we don't feel we are needing to compete with the other sex. That we can collaborate. So I would love on my YouTube channel, wait for the day when I can collaborate with a woman, because I think it'd be really helpful. A lot of the things I talk about, to have a woman's point of view. So if anyone's willing, let me know. And I think that'll do it for this video, make it quite a short one. Gender confusion, cause of the chaos. So let's try and have less confusion. And whatever you've got between your legs when you were born, that's what you should be. And be proud. Be proud of it. Whichever one it is, be proud of it. And it will suit you best. It will aid you. Don't swim against the tide and try and be something you're not. Be what you are. Okay. Ciao for now.